Hey there, WellHouse Church. Good morning. I'm excited to be back with you for another week of teaching the scriptures. I know you're enjoying your fellowship and formation, but why don't you grab some food and coffee and come join me for our time of teaching? Last week we had some technical difficulties, and so today I'm going to try to cram two stories into one. So I'm going to jump right into the text so that we can do this. Abram is a very key character in the book of Genesis. And he is the one through whom God makes the covenant that gives us Jesus. He is the ultimate patriarch of our faith. His story begins in chapter 12, and God tells him that he's going to bear a son, and he's like in his 80s and 90s. Like, this is a huge problem that he's going to have this son. And so, as you might imagine, they run into some problems about being fertile and being able to procreate a son. And so his wife comes to him and says, hey, why don't you sleep with my handmaid? Why don't you sleep with my servant? And then you can have a son through her, and then that will be the son of the covenant. And so he does that. And this conversation, this exchange between Abram and God, happens right after that child is born. His name is Ishmael. And this is what the text says. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. So God shows up to make this covenant with Abram. And he gives Abram a two-part requirement. He says, hey, I'm God Almighty. And here's what I need you to do. I need you to walk before me, and I need you to be blameless. Now, there is a significant difference between blamelessness and sinfulness. Those are not the same thing. Sinless is not being blameless. And so what God is asking him is, he says, hey, be a fruitful person. Be a person of fruitful character. And then God says, I will make my covenant between me and you, and will make you exceedingly numerous. I'm going to multiply you. And then he changes his name from Abram to Abraham, which is a huge moment that signifies a change, that God is doing something new in the life of this person. And then the key verse is verse 6. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. So God says, hey, my covenant with you, it's an everlasting covenant. And I'm agreeing to bless you and multiply you and do all of these things for you and your descendants after you. That I will be your God. And he says, all I'm asking you is for the rest of your life, if you can be fruitful for the rest of your life, then I'm going to be faithful to my part of the covenant and have this everlasting covenant for you forever. You and your offspring. But then in verse 6, God says, I will make you exceedingly fruitful. God puts himself on the hook for all of this covenant. That God is going to continue to do his part in making Abraham a person of fruitfulness. And this conversation continues to go on for a while. At which point, God has this exchange with Abraham about Sarah, his wife. And God changes her name from Sarai to Sarah because God is about to do a new thing through her. Because Abram asks, he says, bro, I'm old. I'm 100 years old. How can I have a son? Can't you just make the covenant go through Ishmael? And this is what God says. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will bless him and make him fruitful and exceedingly numerous. Church, listen, there's a lot of things going on in this story. So make sure you check out a closer look tomorrow because I'm trying to cram two stories into one. Be fruitful and multiply is the command that God gives to the first humans. And it seems to be a part of this divine image and likeness that we're called to be in pursuit of, this fruitful multiplication. We see this same language repeated here for both Abraham and Isaac, as well as for Ishmael. What does it mean that God is insistent that there must be a covenant through Isaac that will give us Jesus? And that line is going to be fruitful and numerous. But God also bestows that same blessing upon Ishmael, someone outside the covenant. I think for me, as much as this text brings about questions, it also means that God's not biased towards those who are in the covenant. God extends and gives blessings and fruitfulness to those outside the covenant, because God is a good and gracious God. And so even though He requires a covenant, even though there's stipulations for the covenant, God is still gracing those outside the covenant with blessings. God is making